Welcome back, everybody. Edwin the Magic Engineer here. And I know I've been gone for a while. You guys haven't seen any new content posted, any new videos on my channel for a while. And there's a specific reason for it. I'm actually moving. So all this location that you see, it's going to be changing here in the pretty near future. My wife and I have been getting our house all ready to sell, and we're going to be going to a new location. So we've been doing tons of work, just getting the house prepared. There's been painting and landscaping and caulking and repairing and just all kinds of work all over the place. So I've been so busy I have not had any time to make any content or play any games or do anything other than just getting ready to move. So apologies to everyone that's been waiting for videos to come out. There will be videos coming out again pretty soon, but I've definitely got some stuff I've got to get through. One other thing I want to mention before I get to the main topic of the video is GP Vegas is coming right up, guys. It's right around the corner, and I'm going to be there at the Vintage Magic booth at GP Vegas. I'll be there with the rest of the Vintage Magic team, with Daniel and with Rudy, and Open Boosters is going to be there, and Brian Weissman is actually going to show up at the booth, and I'm probably going to get to play some games against him, and I'll try to get those recorded, and I'll be playing in the old school tournament on Thursday, and I got to decide which one of my decks I actually want to play for that tournament. So I hope you guys are going to actually be there for GP Vegas, and if not, just tune in to all the content, because I'm sure all of us are going to have videos that we're posting on our channels. So, main topic of what I wanted to talk about. I've been wanting to make this video for a while because the price of old school cards, specifically all the vintage stuff, but more specifically old school, has just been going up like crazy, right? And I've had a few people ask me how do you actually get old school cards? What's the best way to actually buy them? Because they're getting so expensive. And I actually do have some good feedback for you. I have a really solid way to do it. Now, it's not easy, but you will get the cards much cheaper. And what you basically do is you have to kind of do the same thing now. If you want really good prices, you got to do the same thing now that a vendor's going to do. Where instead of buying think of it in for small cards to kind of understand the example. If somebody comes at you with a whole bunch of $10 cards and you're paying $10 for them one at a time, if you instead say, hey, you know what, here's $500. And all those $10 cards that would have added up to $500, I want $600 or $700 worth of cards for this $500 cash. You can make a big deal and get a discount when you buy a large amount. It's always in the big deals where you get the best discounts. And that holds true for the smaller numbers, and it definitely holds true for some of the bigger numbers. Now, if somebody has a large collection of old school cards, and that might include the big stuff, like Power 9 and dual lands and stuff, it could also just be for large amounts of the smaller cards, legends, commons and uncommons, antiquities, commons and uncommons, maybe a couple rares here and there. A lot of old school stuff, good revised and 4th edition stuff. Maybe, if you added it all up, the net value would be $8,000 or something like that. But if you come to someone that has a collection like that, and let's say it's an $8,000 collection, and you say, here's $4,000 cash, I'll give you for all that. So right off the bat, you're going to get an enormous discount on all of those cards. But then the next thing you want to do is, let's say you only really had 1 or 2 decks in mind that you really wanted to build, right? But now you bought this big collection that has a bunch of dual lands and Wheel of Fortune and all this other stuff. You cherry pick cards that are good cards of value that are going to easily sell, that you don't necessarily need, at least right now, and then you resell those ones and you try to recoup your costs. So you take that $8,000 collection, maybe you offer someone $4,500 or $5,000 cash. So they take that, and so now you've spent an awful lot of money, but let's say you resell quite a few of the cards, maybe $3,000 of some of the best cards. Because remember, it was an $8,000 collection, right? And you sell 3,000 of some of the best ones as singles. You still have $5,000 of cards that are basically left. But since you bought them for $4,500 and then you resold 3,000 of it, you basically spent $1,500 and now you got $5,000 worth of cards. So the point is, that's the best way I know about to actually get a large amount of expensive cards. Now, if you're talking about vintage and old school, Unfortunately, it's going to be really expensive. I mean, you might be talking about a $30,000 collection, but now you're going to offer like $18,000 or $20,000 cash or something like that, right? It's a lot of money, right? But that actually is the best way I possibly know of to get cards like on the cheap. And I actually did this. And in fact, I'm going to link a video right now. That's one of my earlier videos from before I actually started this channel as Edwin the Magic Engineer. I went off and I bought a set of signed beta cards that included 5 of the Power 9 and all kinds of other stuff, all in beta. Almost all of them were signed. And I spent 13 grand on buying like all of those. But then I turned around and I resold like a lot of the bigger cards, like the Time Twister, the Chaos Orb, the Time Vault, the Jam-Day Tome, the Winter Orb, like some of the bigger, more expensive cards. I brought my costs way down, right? So I recouped a lot of that 13 grand, and then with some of the extra, I went off and I bought some of the missing cards that I needed again. Like that's how I got my Lotus, that's how I got the Mox Pearl, and that's how I went in and like bought some of the missing blue power that I needed. You know, the Ancestral and the Time Walk and stuff like that, like in Unlimited. Point is, I took that money and I used it real efficiently, and I got some eBay ratings out of it, and that is in fact how I like rebought into Power 9 my 4th time actually, because I've bought Power 9 4 times, I've sold it 3 times, this time I'm not going to sell unless somebody's dying. So anyways, that way does work. Now, that's the best way to buy cards on the cheap, is just get a big deal. Now, there's this last thing I want to mention. This is something I actually did years ago with some friends back in Oregon. Somebody had a big collection of cards, and it wasn't boxes like this. It was like the 5 or 6 row, like 5,000 count boxes, and there was like 6 of them. There was a ton of cards, right? But almost all of them were like commons and uncommons from like older sets that like nobody was playing. But the thing that all of us wanted to do is all of us wanted to kind of flesh out our collections and get a whole bunch of cards that we didn't have. And at that time, I still had a whole bunch of reprints of like other cards and multiple copies of other cards. So I had this idea. I brought like 4 of my friends together, and I said, okay guys, what if I actually buy this big collection of cards? And I think at the time I paid like $250 for it or something like that. But we called it the Blob, right? So this idea, I like to coin the idea, it's the Blob. So I'll buy the Blob first, and I'll go through the Blob, and the cards that I'm still missing that I don't have, I'll pull out at least 4 copies. That's all I'm going to take, is just 4 copies of the cards that I need. And then I'm going to take extra cards that I have, and I'm going to add them into the Blob. And so this is going to take a while, but by the time I'm actually done with it, I'm going to have thousands of cards I didn't actually own before, and then I'm going to add thousands of cards back in. A lot of them, do actually still have some value. So my collection thins down to only 4x of a lot of certain cards, but it expands for a lot of cards that I never even owned before. And then I'll take the Blob, which is still now like six boxes of 5,000 count cards, and I'll pass it on to the next guy, and he'll give me like $150 cash. And so I basically spent like $250 to get the Blob at the beginning from like a card shop or something like that, and then I sold it to one of my friends for $150, so it only cost me $100, but I got tons of cards out of the thing. So then my friend did the next thing, same thing. He went through it and he took cards that he needed, he put in extra cards that he had, and then he passed it to the next guy. And the value of the Blob, of course, went down because people were pulling cards out and they're adding cards in. For the most part, they were worth a little bit less. But the guy who wanted the Blob the least ended up getting it at the end. And I think he paid like $50 for like these 6 huge boxes of cards. Pulled out definitely way over $50 worth of stuff that he needed. And then once we had like all the rest of it that was left there, I think we sold it back to a card store. It's just a ton of like bulk commons, but it was like 6 boxes, but we sold it back to a different store for like $50. But the point was like all 4 or 5 of us had a chance to go through our collections and just massively add to the inventory that each of us actually had, and it ended up being pretty cheap. So I had these boxes out just to kind of demonstrate how one of us would buy it and then like pass it on to the next guy. But again, it was big boxes. It was like the 5-row boxes, and it was like 6 of them that we actually passed around. So for both of these ideas that I'm suggesting, they're definitely good ways to actually flesh out your card collection. And so if you wanted to do some of that with some of your friends, what I would definitely recommend that you do is, keep your eye on Craigslist, keep your eye on if there's card shops around and they have a lot of bulk they want to get rid of, maybe even just walk in and say like, hey, you guys have all these boxes of all these cards everyone's sorting through every day. What would you, could I give you $300 and I'll take all these boxes home? And would you guys be interested in something like that? A lot of times a store might be interested in it, right? You might walk out with tons of cards for on the cheap, and then you can go through them, flesh out your collection, and turn it back in. So that's a couple great ways to actually add cards to your collection, and both of them do require a lot of work. The first thing I mentioned is it takes a lot of cash at the beginning because you're going to be spending well over what you want your final money to be, and then you got to like resell a bunch of stuff on like eBay or something or in person to kind of recoup a lot of your costs. But at the end of the day, you get usually like 3 or 4x the value is what I found. When you buy like a big collection of cards and you get a great price at the beginning and then you resell some of them to recoup some of your costs, what you're left with at the end is usually like the money you still put in at the end of the day. You usually have like 4x value of what's left over. So I hope that's helpful to some of you guys. I've done both of these methods. They did grow my collection substantially. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys like the ideas, if you've done something similar. Maybe you actually have a better idea on how people can actually grow their collections, especially for the older expensive cards, because I know people want to do that. Anyways, thanks a lot guys for tuning in. I will have more content for you here pretty soon. Again, sorry about the lack of content, but I will get through this move here pretty soon. Bye everybody.